This Choircast podcast is brought to you by Heretic 2 by Mattie Jo Cowsert. Ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about faith? In Heretic 2, I dive into LGBTQ affirmation, rejecting divine violence, and embracing universalism in a bold post-Christian perspective. If you're done with outdated dogma and want a justice-oriented, inclusive view of spirituality, then this book is for you. Get Heretic 2 wherever books are sold and start rethinking faith today. This Choircast podcast is brought to you by High Minds. Join host Andy Colenso and Mattie Jo Cowsert as they tackle culture, justice, spirituality, and all the big questions shaping our world. High Minds isn't about talking points or hot takes. It's about deep, insightful conversation that inspires and challenges. Tune in to explore new angles, question the status quo, and elevate your thinking. Listen to High Minds wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Radical Love Life, an ongoing series of conversations with thought leaders exploring faith outside the boxes. Hosted by Mark Dilcomb and Kelly Wilson.
Hey, Mark.
Hello, Kelly.
How are you today?
I am freaking awesome.
Awesome. It's a beautiful day, too.
It
it's
is,
like
right?
Springtime outside, and it's November.
I love it. November 1st. Here we are recording
Right.
today, and it's a beautiful day. But, you know, fall is coming. I mean, well, first of all, fall is fall. It is fall. Let's start there. But, yeah, so this is what do they call it? An Indian summer?
Or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah. I mean, it's been a week of ups and downs, but I'm glad to be here. And just by the way, I posted episode 6 last night of my solo podcast.
You did?
Yes.
So where can people find your solo podcast that you're doing solo without me?
You can find it
Because it's all about me, you know.
wherever on most major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. It's called Faith Still Seeking, and it's a lot of me talking to myself about Christian theology and stuff I learned, and anyway, it's kind of fun for me just to be able to rattle off a bunch of stuff that's in my head. I'm kind of working on a book, but I'm sort of just like talking it out loud. And then, so anyway, I'd love to get some feedback and input on that.
There you are. So tell our listeners where again can they find this?
They can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the show notes. It's called Faith Still Seeking. It's based on that St. Anselm of Canterbury. Yeah. Who his motto was faith seeking understanding. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Latin, but anyway, that's what I've been up to on the side.
Good.
And in my spare time.
Yes. All right. By the way, you're looking more and more like dude, but that's good. That's good.
Yeah. I meant to get a haircut like back in the spring, and I never got around to it.
I know. You're kind of like those sheep that just run away from the shears.
I tell you what, the sheep running away is like the metaphor for my entire spiritual being.
Yeah, for all of us, right?
Yeah.
So what brought us together today, my friend?
Well, today we have a special guest. We're talking with Mattie Jo Cowsert.
Cool.
Who wrote a book with the provocative title, God, Sex, and Rich People.
Yeah, buddy.
That's right. That's like three of our favorite things. Mm-hmm. So just to take a look at her author bio here, Mattie Jo is an actor, writer, and babysitter for billionaires. I can't wait to hear about that. She's a creator of the popular blog God, Sex, and Rich People, and has appeared on the new Evangelicals podcast, Girl Boner Radio. That sounds fun. And others, God, Sex, and Rich People, the TV series, which is in development. And she lives and loves in New York City. Mm-hmm. And connect with her on Instagram at Mattie Jo Cowsert. We'll put that in the show notes. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I've been hearing about your book and actually listened to a couple podcasts that you've talked with other folks. So I'm excited to hear your story. So thanks for being here.
Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So just by the way, we're going to get the record straight. We're a lot more fun than Tim Whitaker is on. I'm going to say that just because, I saw him at the Theology Beer Camp and I was like, so Tim, when are you going to have us on your show? And he's like, no, I'm just, it's great to see Tim. Really,
you guys are a little too high energy.
Yeah.
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 I'm sorry.
No,
sorry,
no.
Tim.
We love Tim. We do.
I
So-
was upset I couldn't make it to Theology Beer Camp this year. I really wanted to, but I had a wedding that I was attending in Tulum, which was very fun. But yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, well, okay. Well, all right.
I know.
Next
year. Next year, though.
France, Denver. Oh, okay. So there you go. Yeah. Well, cool. You did miss an amazing experience. So I will say, a shout out. We were there as podcasters, supporters of Theology Beer Camp through Radical Love Live. And that's why Tim was there. And that's why Josh Patterson of Rethinking Faith was there. And a number of other podcasters whose names I forget. And if they ever listen to this episode, I apologize in advance. Because I can't remember everybody that's in this kind of space like we are, but it was a lot of awesome people. And, what made it so cool was it just allows people to explore and hear some really bright points of view on how people have explored their own faith. And then, of course, some that carry this out in vocation, either as professors or they've written books or it's just the spontaneous conversations that take place. So if anybody ever wants to see how that's done, you got to check out Theology Beer Camp.
I think there's some of the online. I was kind of following online from back here at the home base, and you can access some of the video and stuff.
You really should. It's really good stuff. So, and I am going to say one thing, and I'm sorry before we get started with you, Mattie Jo. One thing though that was so incredible, the communion that we did at that end was the most amazing communion Eucharist I've ever been a part of. It was so transformative. It was just for everybody that was in that moment. I'm just saying it was, wow, this is how you do communion. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, that's good. That's refreshing. After our last episode, we were talking with a nun who grew up with starting communion by beating yourself on the chest and talking about how unworthy you are. So I'm glad that we're evolving.
This thing was overflowing with amazing love and just healing, and oh my God, it was crazy. So yeah.
So we're going to jump into Mattie Jo's story. We get right into it. It sounds like you moved from Branson, Missouri to New York City, but your evangelical faith maybe didn't make it all the way with you. Is that?
Yeah, actually it did. That's the crazy thing. Somebody was asking me who just finished the book, the other day was asking me what was it like to sort of feel like for so long you were of two minds almost. And I was like, yeah, it was really freaking exhausting. That's what it was. I talk about it in the book a little bit, not a little bit, it's like the entire book, about how, part of the deconstruction process that was so difficult was that I was unlearning everything. I was learning new things all the time. So I was exhausted from the culture shock of New York, but I was also exhausted because I was unlearning everything else, which we know is so much work. So I was like, this, how toddlers and babies need to take naps all the time because they're just learning new shit all the time. Sorry, can I curse? I should.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's I was tired. I needed a nap. I was just so exhausted. But anyways, all that to be said, my evangelical faith actually did make it to New York with me. I fully thought I would just show up and live my life exactly as I had been living it, because as we know, being a Christ follower is not a fair weather thing. You have unwavering faith, right? The Lord does not change. And so I did not think that, I was very confident in my faith. I was very sure of my faith. I definitely did not move to New York thinking I was going to have to reconcile every single belief that I held and therefore have an identity crisis. But it happened just by stepping outside of the walls of what I was told for years were absolute truth, and then realizing this cannot possibly be absolute truth. There were some... Yeah. There were some things that didn't make it with me that had started to peel back, which I talk about in the book, which is there's a chapter about when I go to theater camp for the first time, and in all caps, it says everyone is going to hell. And it's about my internal...
Because you were going to theater camp, you're going to go to hell for that?
No, because obviously there were gay people and Jews at theater camp.
Yeah, it's pretty gay at theater
camp. Oh, you're gonna run into the gays and the
yes,
Jews.
and then I'm gonna have to like pull out the bridge analogy, and it just was like a whole thing. And so that was like the beginning of my questioning, right? Because I was a theater kid, so but then kind of put that on the back burner because I didn't really like do theater. Like there wasn't a big theater community in my world, ironically, because it's Branson, right? So you would think it's like all the theater.
Great theater down there.
Right, that's like Christian Vegas, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't really trying to do like the bald numbers kind of theater. So,
okay, so guys, you'll just Google it and let's move on. Okay.
Yeah, just Google it. So yeah, there was me sort of like deciding in high school and college, like I don't really think the evangelical faith is right about the gay people thing. I like don't think gay people are going to hell. And then through my work in the mission field, it sort of had the like reverse effect of on me. And I was like, I actually also don't think people of other faiths are going to hell. So I had sort of started questioning. Yeah.
Where did you go in the mission field?
Indonesia.
Oh, wow.
That's
the freaking epicenter of Muslims and Hindus. And yeah, man, they all needed Jesus. And I was going to give it to them, baby.
So seriously, you went on mission in Indonesia with that as your goal was you were going to show them the gift of Jesus.
Well, that's what I was being groomed for. But by the time I had made it to Indonesia, I was like, I don't really think I buy into this, which again, it talks about that in the book and like how I got there. But then I got to Indonesia and it was even more reinforced. Like I was like, this is so messed up, like for many reasons, but they had fear-mongered me so hard that I really thought if I do not devote my life to full-time mission work, I am not a real Christian. And so I was like going to change my major. I was going to like, become a full-time missionary. And then I had like one conversation with my dad about it. And he was like, that's insane. Absolutely not. And then I decided not to do mission work anymore.
And your dad's a pastor, right?
Yeah, I know. My story is truly full of so many curveballs. Like nothing is as stereotyped, I think, as people might think. Yeah.
Well, there's a truth to what you say because no two people's story is ever the same, and but it is fascinating. All right, so just for context, so you were already in what you probably did not use the word deconstruction at that moment, but you're like starting to question your faith and why does it align with what you're seeing in the world? Because now you're in different experiences. Because theater camp, oh wait a minute, they're actually not going to go to hell, and so gay people aren't so bad, blah, 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 blah. And then you were still planning to go on the mission to Indonesia. And you had questions, but you still went on the mission. And then in that moment, you had a crisis and you thought you actually had to go deeper.
Yeah. And because this organization, and there are many of them, right? Like I could rattle off STUMO, YWAM, I don't know. There are a lot of them that are like overseas IndoctriNation incubators. But basically I thought like, I need to break up with my boyfriend because we know that's the first sign that you are really devoted to your relationship with Jesus is like, don't have a boyfriend. And then I needed to like give up my hopes and dreams and goals of moving to New York to become an actor to, self-sacrifice and do what I'm really need to be called to do, which is to become a full-time missionary. And they just sort of like really deeply guilted you into it and made you feel like you weren't enough, like you weren't truly of the faith if you didn't do this. And so I was ready to do that. And then I didn't. And instead I backed out of the organization. And because my dad said something really profound to me. And I say in the book, thank God I have a pastor dad who's more like Mel Robbins than a Baptist pastor. But he said to go against your design would be going against God. And, you know, I was very much raised to believe that I was designed with certain passions and skills and talents, and that I was made with that because that's what I'm supposed to do. And so my love for acting, my love for storytelling, my love for New York and how spirited I was about and excited about moving there, my dad was like, your call is not to overseas mission. Your call is the theater, you know?
Wow. That's so affirming, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
wise.
Wow.
Yeah, that's very.
So does your dad, is this how he lives out his ministry and his life, is, you know, because that's really kind of a profound way to put it in that kind of context, that everybody, not just his children, that he's a part of their creation, but everybody has a design.
Yeah, that is how he lives. I mean, my parents were not, they did nothing. I feel like they lived a life of risk. That's what I'll say. So like they didn't take the safe route in many ways. And so I don't think they felt like they could force that on us kids, like especially when it comes to doing theater and in the arts for a living. Like so many parents are, especially in religious circles, they're like, oh, those are all the sinners and the gays, right? And like my parents just weren't like that. They were like, they really believed, do what you love because you love that for a reason, and that we would figure it out. You just follow it and then like you figure it out. They just really trusted us to do that. And I do think that my dad, and I talk about this in the book too, like because I had a father and a mom whose faith was ultimately steeped and grounded in empathy and compassion, that is what we learned God was at home. And so even though I had this culture that really messed it up for me within church and within the culture at large with purity culture and whatnot, and, you know, Kanakuk camps is in Branson, so that had a heavy influence on the culture as well. At home, we learned a God of love and compassion. And so that is what we ultimately, and what my parents taught us to like live out in our faith, which is ultimately why I deconstructed and left the faith, because I was like, these two things are not the same.
They're not compatible.
Yeah.
So put you on the spot here. Do you consider yourself a Christian?
I don't. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that, actually. I have a chapter in my book about this as well, when I didn't know. I was so afraid to call myself a Christian because I didn't want to, you know, I had the message in my ear that maybe you guys had, maybe you didn't, which is like, if you claim to be a Christian, but you're not living like Christ, then you're leading others astray. And so I was like, I don't want to be sending other people to hell by saying I'm a Christian, but not living a Christ-like lifestyle. But I don't want to not call myself a Christian because then I'll go to hell. It was this like internal torment. Yeah. So I didn't.
Never heard of that level of guilt.
Well, I know a version of that, which is like the reason that I don't have, because I do consider myself still a Christian, even though I am occasionally tempted to be like a not that kind of Christian, but but like I don't put the Christian fish on the back of my car because it might be a mixed message with me flipping the guy off in the next lane as he's cutting me off. Like I don't necessarily drive in a way that is exemplary of the Christian message. So I don't want to give Jesus a bad name because of the way I drive.
Well, I appreciate your self-awareness. So Mattie Jo, thank you for sharing that.
I'm working on that.
Okay. Yeah. But thank you for that, because I you know, again, we all have our life experiences. I had never thought about the weight of using that word and what a potential consequence could be by claiming you're a Christian and then doing not what is Christ-like, as you said, and then leading others astray, and somebody making that connection, then you have the guilt of that. Oh my God.
I mean, that's like literally why that was the excuse they used for everything. Like I would say to my pastor, like, why is it wrong for like someone to be gay? Like they're not hurting anyone. Right. And they'd be like, well, actually they are hurting someone because they're going against God and they're going against the scripture, right? And so they're just sending this message to everybody that it's okay to be gay, even though that goes against scripture. And then you're hurting the kingdom of God at large. And you're just sending a bunch of people to hell because you're portraying this falsehood with your lifestyle.
Oh my God.
And it was everything. That applied to sex before marriage, that applied to drinking, that applied to dating someone if you were not equally yoked. Like, the anxiety I had about living like Christ in whatever that meant to whatever Bible study leader I had at the time, right? Like, it was suffocating. And so the funny thing about this, even though I lived with that while I was in New York, is actually no one cared at all. Like, no one in New York was like, oh, I think she said she was a Christian and now she's at a club, like, no, nobody thought that at all. But like, I was still dealing with these like residual beliefs, right? I call it like youth pastor Jiminy Cricket in my ear for years, right? So yeah, but I will say, though I do not identify as a Christian, the reason why I don't identify as a Christian is because I think, and I know that this is like up for interpretation, but at the core of it, you have to believe that like Jesus is the Messiah sent here to, like, he is a demigod. He is God personified, right? And died on the cross for our sins. And I just don't believe that. Like, I don't think that Jesus was God incarnate. I believe so many other beautiful things about what Jesus brought to this earth and my connection to Jesus, but I don't believe in this like messianic message. And I also think that the very like impetus and like beginning of Christianity was not about Jesus. It was about a political movement, right? It was Rome then. Now it's Christian nationalists. So it's like, I don't know, history has repeated itself. But at the very core, when we organized around like the Council of Nicaea, canonizing the Bible, all of that was all political. That was not really about Jesus. And so I am like, I don't really think Jesus cares if I'm a Christian, because he didn't even know Christianity was being
he wasn't a Christian either.
Right.
That's what I always say. It's like, you realize he wasn't a Christian.
Yeah, he was Jewish.
Right. He's Jewish, right?
And kind of a rebel at that.
So what would you, if I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you have a word that you call yourself, or do you refuse to be labeled?
No, it's not even like a conscious, like, I refuse to be labeled, or like, if I was, I suppose I'm an apostate. Yeah. If I had to give myself a word,
Apostate. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because
moving on.
Yes, that's it. I just don't really adhere to any
awesome
religion necessarily, though I wouldn't call myself an agnostic, because I definitely believe in God.
So thank you very much for saying that. And again, I don't want to be like, because we've got so much to talk to you
about. An atheist. I wouldn't call myself an atheist, because I definitely believe in God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there are folks like you and me, because I identify like that. Maybe not the brother sitting next to me. He doesn't quite go that far as what I will do or what you will do. But I am in that, you and I are in that in between, and there are a lot of us others. And so people will put us in that bucket of the SBNRs, spiritual but not religious. I'm like, yeah, but that really doesn't work either. There's got to be a label, because I'm not trying to box us in, but what are we? That we are followers of the stories of Jesus. We embrace the beauty of the scripture from a historical point of view. And also there's a shitload of lessons out of there too. Some of them pretty whacked, but there's things there, and that's a part of our human history here. And I do believe in something that is greater than us, and it could very well involve this dude. And, well, it does, because we're all connected in that sense. But what is that called? What is that?
Is that a universalist?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe we've come up with a new word.
Is it a mystic?
Is it a mystic?
Yeah.
I call myself a mystic. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll say Mattie Jo the Mystic.
Mattie Jo the Mystic, that works. Sure,
I
I can go with that. That sounds way more like I've gone on like far more ayahuasca retreats than I have, but we'll go with it. Yeah, I have this joke that like in New York, like churches can't survive in New York City. So they all just become really expensive private schools or Universalists. Like that's the only way a church, or like Unitarian, right? The Unitarians are really great too. But otherwise, that's why I always found it so funny that like Hillsong had such a presence in New York. I'm like, literally all these churches are shutting down. And then there's like also, you know, Presbyterian, Tim Keller, the late Tim Keller's church is also, so there are some mega churches, but for the most part, they're all shutting down. And I'm like, all right, that one's going to be a private preschool catering to millionaires later.
But it is a little bit borough specific that if you start to get out into Queens and Brooklyn, there are some pockets of more conservative areas where, and you've got some of the mega churches out there. In Manhattan, it is like you got to have a real good music program.
Well, you have to have a lot of people tithing because that rent is not a joke, right? So if you've got New York City real estate as a church, you have successfully brainwashed a lot of people.
I do think that the Hillsong experience in New York is partially because they're very close to Times Square, where you get a lot of tourists.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, there's a freaking Red Lobster in Times Square. Like, who comes to New York to eat Red Lobster?
Or
like New Yorkers don't, but
definitely not New Yorkers. But
so it's definitely, I think it's a tourist attraction.
And
that,
bubblegum
like
shrimp.
David Wilkerson's church, and
bubblegum. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It was probably a lot of tourism. Yeah, I can see that. There's also, and this is a tangent and then we can, move on to something else, but there's also a very big Jehovah's Witness community in New York. I personally think because Jehovah's Witness as an organization preys on the vulnerable. So it's a lot of minorities are part of the JW organization. And so lots of Jehovah's Witness churches as well. The headquarters used to be in Brooklyn. They had the Watchtower.
That's right.
And then they mysteriously sold it, and we have no idea where that money went.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I love the way you speak, because these are the same thoughts that I have as well. So, because I see these folks, we see them in the subways, right? with their tracks.
I got a personal letter from one time.
Really?
Yeah. Up in Washington Heights. It was like, and it was for somebody who lived down the block. Like, hi, Kelly, I'm praying for your soul. Like, who is this creepy person?
I was in Harlem for years, and some guy came and knocked on my apartment door, not just the building door, on my apartment door. And I was like, how is this legal? And I said that to him. I was like, this is illegal. Get out of our apartment. Like, you can't be here. Just knocking on people's doors. How did you get in? Like, anyway.
Thief in the night.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Okay, duly noted. I'll remember that. So, all right. So, wow. Okay.
One thing I wanted to ask is, I know you've been through this deconstruction journey and gone from, a very specific kind of Christianity to this kind of broader, mystical or whatever. But it sounds like along the way, you did a deeper dive into learning about Christianity.
Yeah.
Smart.
Right. It's so, which I talk about this too. I call it my scriptural skepticism spiral. I'm sorry. I have a little bit of a cough. I'm not sick, but I just have this lingering cough. Anyway. So basically what happened is this is why my joke is that, and then my entire identity imploded thanks to Tinder and my Jewish roommate, because I went on a date with a Jewish guy. And
yes, keep going.
Yeah. And I went on a date with a Jewish guy, and then I came home in like an equally yoked panic. I was like, oh no, he's Jewish. And then I was like, how did I not see that coming? Like, why wasn't he wearing a yarmulke? Where were his curly cues? I was so distraught. I was like, the line in the book is like, do Jews just simply walk amongst us like totally normal people? Like, I was very clearly new to the Upper West Side. And so I'm like having this panic attack to my roommate, who turns out is also Jewish.
Oh my God,
And
you didn't know that. Oh, wow.
I did. I was like, you're a Jewish daywalker too? Where are all of you coming from? To which it's like, Eastern Europe. They
Right.
all moved after the Holocaust. It was their Israel. Like they had no other choice.
Right.
Anyway, all that again, history. What? I didn't know any of this. So, anyways, and we get into a conversation about why this is so stressful to me that he's of a different faith and all of this. And he goes, what does he say? He says something to the effect of, I was like, he's like, so this is really important to you. And I'm like, well, yes, because I couldn't date someone, like I would never date a Mormon. I could never imagine dating someone whose like faith is so different, or their faith is essentially founded on made up information. That's what I said. And he goes, wow. Because at that point, I wasn't so righteous that I thought only Christians were going to heaven, but I was so righteous to say that like my beliefs are not hogwash, but the Mormons absolutely are. And so, or like the JW or whatever Muslims, even though I didn't think they were going to hell, I just thought it was not right. And so I say this, and my roommate goes, yeah, because Mormons have really crazy beliefs. And I'm like, well, do you know what they believe? Like, and I list off all these things. He's like, yeah, no, I get it. Christians get miracles. Everyone else gets stuff they made up. And I was like, oh, shit. And like that hit. And then he was like, and he goes on this little tangent. And then he was like, I suggest you, read this book. And the book that he suggested I read was Zealot by Reza Aslan. And it was the first time I ever read about a historical Jesus, not like from a Christian white point of view. And that set me on an absolute spiral. And then I was reading, like, I didn't stop reading textual criticism books for like months. And after all, and like the word I use is I got really didactic about it. Like I was literally getting textbooks from divinity schools, like Columbia Divinity, Princeton Theology, like all of these places. And I was getting those textbooks, and that's how I discovered the work of Bart Ehrman and all of this stuff, learning about the history of the New Testament, the Old Testament, all of that. Yep. And then that is when I remember the day that I was just like sitting on my couch overlooking the Hudson. And I was like, I don't think Jesus is who they told me he is. And whether I want it to or not, that is going to change my entire life. And so it was like I couldn't unknow everything I had learned at that point. And so, yes, it was like my deconstruction was a combination of, sure, like lived experience and curiosity, but it was also a lot of research that sort of just further informed the fact that much of my belief system was not actually founded in love. It was actually all founded in fear. And that most of the ways that I had decided to conduct myself behaviorally, morally, was contingent on my punishment in the afterlife, nothing to do with my present life. And it was all about social control. It was not really ever about Jesus. And I was just left with like a mess of that, right? I call it my rebel years, where like my internal world was just an atomic wasteland, but I had no idea how to rebuild it yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that where the sex and rich people come in?
Yeah, totally. No, so the rich people, so my little like elevator pitch is, and then instead of becoming a wife like I was supposed to in my early 20s, I moved to New York to become an actor, and my entire identity imploded thanks to Tinder and my Jewish roommate. all of my secular world experiences were culminating to force me to question my faith, reinvent my sexuality, all while living with and working for the 1%. So rich people were this unexpected container for my identity crisis, and they have been along for the journey. Like, I just left. I need to change my babysitter for billionaires part of my bio, because I actually just finished like what I know will be my last nanny job for billionaires. But I have lived with and worked for the even like the 0.01% for much of my time in my deconstruction years. So it's been very weird. So it's like culture shock from every angle, you know? So the rich people is who I ended up working or living with when I first moved to New York through a series of weird, a weird series of events, which, you know, I'm like on the phone with my brother one night, like telling him about like how I think that I got this amazing apartment in New York City because I saved myself. I was saving myself until marriage, and because I was such a devout follower of Christ. And my brother, who had connected me through friends of a friend of a friend from college, he goes, "No, Mattie, you got that apartment because I did cocaine in college." I was like, oh, yeah, well, that takes some pressure off, I guess. So that was the rich people. And then also like working for rich people. And the sex was right. Like, I was a proud purity ring where I definitely thought I was going to save myself until marriage. And then I lost my virginity to this pop star. And I have like literally a pilot I can send you guys that's all based on my first time. And I was in just that one experience, so many of the lies were bust open. I was like, and then it just like kept going. It was like, oh my gosh, what else did they lie to me about? What else did they lie to me about? And then obviously God is roped into all of that because of the faith aspect.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You've had a wild ride there so far.
Man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It takes a lot because you're young, and for you to have all of this happen in such a short time frame, right? This is what we're talking about, a span of maybe 10 years or
10
less?
years,
How
yeah.
many years?
10 years.
God, that's a hell of a decade there. So where does this take you next? What's up next?
Well, I think that, well, in terms of like the book and everything, is that what you mean, or like my life?
No, more than that. Where does Mattie? What is the next chapter for Mattie Jo?
Yeah, so I definitely want to write another book, because, you know, you'll see if you guys read it, like I sort of nod to an experience I had in 2016 with date rape, like 2 days after Donald Trump was elected. And that experience combined with the 2016 election really catalyzed a whole other part of my healing. And I didn't feel like I could fit that in this book. It like felt like a totally other book entirely. So I definitely want to write another book. And it sounds really dark. Well, because it is, right? But I think sort of like my skill is that I can approach hard topics with levity. And like, even I wrote a piece about these experiences. It's like a 3-part series on my blog called Life After Cowboys. And so many people who have read that piece, Life After Cowboys Part 1, was like, I found myself feeling bad that I was laughing during a piece about rape. But like, that's just kind of what I do. So like, not to like take away the gravity of the situation, but like, you know, commentary on what systems are in place and how laughable it is that like freaking Donald Trump is less qualified than a drunk baby goat to be a president. And like, he still beat Hillary Clinton.
So you're making me laugh when you say that, because I just pictured a drunk baby goat, and I was like, man, that would be,
what does that even look like? We don't know. Like, probably more productive than Donald Trump. And like, he won then, he's back on the ballot now, and it's like, oh my gosh. So anyways,
and it's close. That's the thing, is it's like close. It should not be.
It shouldn't be this way.
It shouldn't be this way.
Let's all agree. Shouldn't be this way. But it is.
So yeah, I definitely want to write another book. I also have, as mentioned in the intro, I've been slowly developing a TV series. I stopped for 3 years to finish this book. So the pilot is now on YouTube. You can watch it, God, Sex, and Rich People. It's got over like 300,000 views at this point. It did really well in its first week. Yeah. I just emailed YouTube today to be like, when am I getting paid for this? And
Where's the money?
like apparently there's ad revenue. Who's it going to? So that is still in development. I'm trying to like finalize the full pilot script and then put like a treatment together. I've got a producer attached she's the same producer that did the proof of concept with me. And then I also am developing a dating course for like post purity culture dating. And that will be running. Brilliant. Yeah. And so that, and I'm probably gonna collaborate in some way with like some sex educators as well. So there's like, because I know from my experience with sexual trauma therapy what has really worked for me, but I do want to have some like professional voices. I call myself a civilian expert, but I'm not a professional.
No, I do exactly the same in the space I work in. So, how are you planning to do this? Oh God, you called it dating course, but
through my publisher, they have like a coaching platform through their publishing. And so I will be probably doing it through there. And then I'm also just trying to I have got a book tour coming up in January and February that's going to be localized to just Missouri and Missouri, Northwest Arkansas, and Little Rock. And then I'll extend out to other places after that.
So where can people find out about that?
So definitely subscribe to my newsletter, MattieJoCowsert.com, because that's where like the algorithm, but definitely follow me on Instagram as well. But like sometimes you might miss things on Instagram, right? So this is the best way to get all those announcements. So that'll be happening. And then in the meantime, I'm just trying to do a lot of like open mics and appearances around New York City, with like 5 to 7 minute excerpt readings of my book.
Wow. So who do you find that you're talking to in New York City? Because I know that from my experiences, like I don't know if I exactly call myself ex-evangelical, but definitely like hybrid evangelical progressive. Is I think
you're an evolved evangelical.
That's a good way to say it.
Very evolved. Yeah.
Is that rather than necessarily talking to people who are in very conservative spaces and kind of leading them out, I'm often educating progressive people about like, this is what evangelicals are thinking, this is what that life is like. So I'm curious in New York City who you find your audience usually is.
So the cool thing about New York and the cool thing about being from a religious background is that, or being ex-evangelical, is that this is many people. Like it's a niche, but large group of people. So what I find is that if I just use the term ex-evangelical, or like the second I say that, or if I say my term is recovering evangelical, right? The subtitle of my book is a recovering evangelical testimony. I pretty much just have to say the title of my book and my people like show themselves, reveal themselves. But then there's also speaking to the more progressive, more like coastal elites. And my book is like, it is like a social observation. They're like, this is crazy. Like it's to your point, educating them on educating them on like what the culture is really like. Because when you grow up in it, you don't actually think it's extreme, right? It's like why I was so poo-poo about Mormons, but the term I use is same song, different choir robes. Like it's all kind of the same. Yes, of course, there are people who are doing like the Bill Gothard style stuff, but that's not really any different than how I was being raised. We just had cooler music.
Yeah. I mean, I remember sitting with somebody in college one time talking, and I was like, well, I don't know about Mormons. They seem like kind of a cult. And he's like, You mean that your church isn't a cult?
Yeah, right.
Like literally,
You're calling
like,
somebody else a
look
cult.
yeah, it's like, yeah, because they got magic underwear. It's like,
Yeah.
magic.
You have purity rings.
Yeah, rings, exactly. Oh, you got this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
The magic underwear. You always have to, and there is actually a chapter in my book about I meet a Mormon. I won't give anything away, but I meet a Mormon at an airport, like a Mormon boy, and like I develop a crush on him. And we talk about the holy underwear.
Oh, wow.
It's very what's the word I'm looking for?
Did he show you his holy underwear?
I think he ditched them by the time he met me.
Wow.
I did not see the holy underwear. Or maybe he just hid them very well. They were like sewn to the side of his pants.
Okay. We have got to read your book. If anything else, I think that was probably the best tease you could have possibly placed on your book. It's like, what happened to Mattie Jo and the Mormon boy?
That's right.
Yes.
You know that does sound like porn. You realize that, right?
I know, it does. It's somebody's kink for sure.
Right.
Probably a Mormon kink, if we're honest.
Speaking as a gay man, there are plenty of gay men. There's plenty of gay porn out there that involve Mormon boys.
Wait, I have to say, when I would tell people about my blog.
There's that's a subgenre.
Oh, totally, dude. There's people. Oh, man, absolutely.
The former, what is it? The former, I heard someone at a musical theater audition use this term one time. It's FOMO, former, what is it? Oh my God. FOMO, I'm going to totally mess it up anyway, but it means former Mormon homo.
FOMO, homo.
Like FOMO, momo, homo, I think is what it was.
FOMO, momo, homo. That's perfect.
Yeah,
I love it.
right.
Yeah. Yes. What do you think they're doing on all those missionaries?
Right.
Oh my God. All right. So now we're going to get hate letters from the Mormons. They say all press is good press.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, especially from the Mormons. Are you kidding me? They've got loads of money.
And they do.
Get them mad at you. But did you know that JetBlue is run by a Mormon billionaire?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. I might be misspeaking, but I'm pretty sure because I heard that from another billionaire. And so I think it must be true directly from his mouth.
Yeah,
so it has to be true. Billionaires know each other. There aren't that many of them, okay?
That's true. Exactly. They all know each other. Right. Oh my God. What a fun conversation with you, Mattie Jo. Oh, wow. You have to come back.
I would love to.
Next time we'll pick you up and bring you into the studio.
Yeah, sorry. Oh my gosh. I was looking that up and I just thought like, I'll just take New Jersey Transit, no problem. And then I looked at the times today because when I was planning it last night, it looked like totally fine. And then today I was like, well, this doesn't work out at all.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry about that.
No, don't apologize. It's good to see you.
You got such a great energy. We'd love to have you here. As we're past the hour now, do you have any kind of messages that you want to make sure that words of wisdom that you'd like to tell our listeners as kind of a send off, other than buy your book because it's It's an exciting ride.
Yeah.
Definitely buy my book. It's been a labor of love over the last 5 years. And that's a whole story too of like my publishing journey and everything, but definitely buy my book. I really think if you are, a woman coming out of evangelicalism, even if you're not, but like it's from my perspective. So like, I think it resonates a lot with women. And whether you got married and did the whole purity ring thing or you didn't, you will feel so seen by this book. At least this is what I'm hearing from many, many readers. And it's got tons of niche references. So even better if you're from the Midwest, because it's got loads of niche Missouri references. And I think the biggest thing, and this is, I guess, still read the book, but I put this in my intro, which is the biggest thing that I struggled with during my time is this underlying belief that I was bad, which makes sense, right? Because we learn original sin and we learn that we are born bad and we always need something outside of ourselves to make us good. And so the biggest work, well, two things, but this one, the biggest like fundamental thing you're going to have to do to like move forward in your life in a positive way is to stop believing that you're bad. So what I want my readers to walk away with is like, you are not bad. You are so, so, so good. You are not, this is the term I use in the book, a heartless bag of dicks because you prioritize yourself. That is, being self-absorbed is not the same as being selfish. Like, so yeah. That's what I have to say.
A heartless bag of dicks. So I have a dear friend of mine who that was kind of a shout out to Laura in Wisconsin, a former coworker. She's like, "Go eat a bag of dicks." And so
such
you're
a great insult.
It's a great insult, exactly. So well, unless you're gay, it's like, well, I don't know.
Right. Maybe I'm into that.
Yeah, maybe I'm into that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's porn about that too.
Yeah, there's porn about that.
Definitely.
Oh my gosh. We're going to get a rating on this episode, but it's all good. It's worth it.
That's right. So, well, Mattie Jo, thank you so much. It was great spending time with you today. Yeah. And we hope to see you again soon.
Oh, you will see us.
Yes. Okay, great. I would love to be back on. So just let me know.
All right.
Absolutely.
All see you, Mattie Jo.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Radical Love Live, hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson. Recorded at the Breakfree Studios in Garfield, New Jersey. All rights reserved. Find our episodes on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And check us out at radicallovelive.com, along with our personal websites at markdilcom.com and kellywilson.com. This is Radical Love Live, where we explore faith outside the boxes.